There you go.
All right, wonderful. So I'm John Wynn. I am the CSM for New England and also Michigan. Um, so I am really happy to have everybody here today. We're at the end of our day as well. So thank you for your participation in this. And I hope you'll get something out of this series that I'm doing here on meeting scenarios. Um, One of the things that I said is I love to do an agenda so you know what you're coming into, right? So by the end of the session, I hope you'll understand some roles in the standard teams meetings, uh, find where you can find meeting options that allow you to control these roles and functionalities that impact the different types of meetings that you can create. And then at the end, hopefully you can create and apply different types of meeting scenarios to impact your work. Now, I know like in Teams meetings, one of the biggest things that a lot of my users in New England don't take advantage of is the fact that, by looking at the roles within a regular standard meetings, you can actually create different scenario usages, right? Um, so I'm going to start here with the roles. I don't know if people are cognizant, but there's actually three main roles inside of a Teams meeting, and then you also have the guest that comes in, right? So as the organizer,
Hey,
one of the
John.
things about yes,
Sorry to interrupt. Do you just want to adjust your mic a little bit? It sounds like it's
it's
echoing
out.
a little bit.
Thanks for saying that. How's it now?
Oh, it's better.
Awesome. To switch to my puck there. So I'll start again. So like when you're going inside of a team's meetings, right? Like we have these roles designated in teams regular standard meetings, and I'd love to talk about like how that impacts a meeting, right? So you have the organizer. So the organizer is actually the person that creates the meeting. Right. And the organizer has very specific rules that only they have where nobody else would have. For instance, the organizer can download attendee list. They can control the meeting options, right? They can control breakout rooms, and then they also can do everything else that presenters and everybody else can do, right? So the organizer really has those specific functionalities. Now, when you talk about presenters, when you make people presenters, what can presenters do that helps them? Well, if you're controlling the lobby, presenters also can admit people into the lobby. I'll talk to you about different scenarios on why you would want that or not want that, right? You can also promote attendees to presenters, so you can promote others to being presenters with you. You can share your screen. You can mute others in the meeting. You can mute everybody in the meeting, right? You can also record the meeting, and you can also remove people from meetings. So presenters actually have a lot of functionalities, right? And then you talk about the last role, which is you can flip people to being attendees. Now, as attendees, one of the things is that attendees can only turn on their camera, they can unmute their microphones to speak, and there is a caveat to that, right? We have the ability to hard mute attendees, so we can actually take the mic away from attendees as well. But if we hadn't done that, then they can unmute, and then they can participate in chat. And last thing, they can pin the video feed. So if you want a lot of control over your meetings and you don't want a lot of disruptions, attendees might be a way to do that, right? And then the last role is guest. So whenever you have meetings, you can invite people into your meetings that are outside your organization, and they come in as guests. So you always know the guest designation because next to their name, they'll always say guest, right, in parentheses. Now, one thing you need to recognize is guests can never record a meeting. They'll never be able to have that functionality, right? But then you can take a guest and you can promote them either to being a presenter or you can keep them as an attendee, right? Like there's two roles that they can be as a guest in addition to that, right? One of the things about these roles is they actually impact when you go into meeting options, and you can change them into being presenters or attendees, right? And how would you know that? How do you know who are the presenters and who are the attendees? By default, when you create meetings, most people come in as presenters. So if you, first of all, if you come in into a meeting and you click on the participants list, you'll see that it says in this meeting, and then it has all these people's names underneath there. Now, if that's the case, you're going to assume that everybody in that meeting is a presenter. The second you take any one of those attendees, I mean, any one of those people in the meetings, and you turn them into an attendee, then when you look at participants, we break it apart for you. So now you have presenters on top where you can see the names of the people who are presenters, and then it designates people who are attendees. So you can actually look and see who are presenters and who are attendees right off the spot. One of the nice things about this participant guide too is if you are a presenter or an organizer, you can promote people or demote people, right? So how do you do that? Well, you go next to their name and you'll see an ellipses, right? And when you hover over that ellipses and you click on it, there's going to be a drop down menu. One of the options here is to make somebody an attendee if they're already a presenter, or if they're an attendee, you can click on the three ellipses and you can promote them to being a presenter, right? So these are things that you can do individually to participants in a meeting. Now let's talk about how that impacts the meetings, right? Before we do that, really want to share with you how do you make these changes. So if you're talking about a pre-meeting kind of experience, you can access this meeting options through multiple ways. The first way is through email. So if you look over here in email, I did a little flow chart over here. So if you go into your calendar, pick any one of your meetings and open it, and when you open it, it comes here, and then the our Microsoft Teams meetings. It has a lot of information there, and one of the pieces in there is meeting options at the bottom. Now, if you guys don't have audio conferencing license, ignore this piece here. So normally most people will see join on your computer or mobile app and then click here to join, right? And then they'll have learn more in meeting options. So when you click on meeting options, it will take you to a web page, right? That will give you the meeting options that you can change. Now, if you are looking for this pre-meeting in Teams, well, in Teams, you go into your calendar, right? So then you open up one of the meetings, and then in one of the meetings, at the very top, you'll have a ribbon, and you'll see this ribbon here. So I made it a little bit bigger here, and one of those things is meeting options. If you click on that, it will take you to the same web page that allows you to change your meeting options. Now, this came recently, and I love this feature. Before this came out, you had to go to another web page to change the meeting options during a meeting, right? Now, inside of meeting, when the meeting is going on, you can actually change these settings as well. So if you're inside the meeting and you guys are in the middle of your meeting and you wanted to switch this up, the way you do that is you hit the three ellipses here, and then you'll see meeting options. Now, again, this function is only for the organizer, right? Not everybody is going to see this option. So when you click on the meeting options, it takes you, to the meeting options pane on the right-hand side, and then you can affect the same kind of feature sets, right? Now let's talk about what happens when you toggle some of these things to create you these meeting scenarios. So I came up with 5 meeting scenarios in which you can affect these settings, right? Knowing that these are the different roles in a meeting. So here's the 5, and we're going to go over them. Preventing recordings. I know a lot of my customers ask, hey, is there a way to stop people from recording in a meeting? Yep, you can do it. And I'll show you that in this next couple of minutes here. You can also make private meeting space, prevent people from accidentally coming into your meeting and overhearing a conversation that is confidential. You can turn a meeting into a presentation style, so you can have presenters and attendees with limited interruptions, right? And then you can have a collaborative meeting. And then the last one, which is fun, which a lot of people don't use, but with meeting fatigues, I love this one where it's team building, where you can have create a meeting space where you can have lunch or team building events. So let's hop to it. Here's the first one. So looking at these meeting options, and again, I showed you like pre-meeting and in-meeting, you can access these same feature sets, right? If you want to prevent people from recordings, you would go into who can present, right? And when you go to who can present, there's a drop-down menu, And that drop down menu will give you these options here. You want to set it to only me. Why? Because only me causes everybody to be an attendee. And as you know, attendees and guests do not have the ability to record. So by flipping everybody to an attendee, there won't be anybody that can hit the record button except you. So in effect, you really have changed this meeting to being kind of like a non-recordable meeting. Um, of course, you know, if you're pressing the record button, then that's different, right? But you're limiting others who can record. How do we create a secure meeting? So how do we control
Hey,
who is
John.
in the room? Go ahead.
Now you're going a little bit far out on your audio.
Okay, how's that? Better?
Yes.
If not, I'll try my headset on again. So let me know.
Okay.
Okay, so this one here, you know, people have asked me from time to time, you know, how can I create a secure meeting? You know, sometimes, you know, I give out links to my meetings, and I'm really afraid that if my group is talking about something confidential, I don't want somebody just coming into the meeting accidentally and overhearing the conversation that's taking place, right? And if you have a need in which you need a secure room, you actually can do that in meeting options. So the first thing you would do is you would set the meeting options who can bypass the lobby to only me. That way, everybody who is trying to come into the meeting will be stopped by the meeting lobby, and then you're the only one that can let them in, right? And then the second thing you want to do is you want to set who can present to only me. Why would you do that? Because remember what I shared with you before, the presenters can let people in the lobby. And you know, sometimes in meetings, people who become presenters, they see people who are trying to come in the meeting, and by rote memorization, they click in to let people in accidentally or intentionally. You know, like they just click it to let people into the meeting. So you can prevent people from accidentally letting somebody into your meeting from the lobby. So in this case here, you're really controlling the lobby effect and controlling who can come into that meeting. So in a case like this, when you have the people that are supposed to be in the meeting, you've essentially locked out this meeting so that somebody else can't just wander in, right? They'll be stopped by the lobby. Now, if you have a specific person who you would like to help you, you know, monitor that lobby and making sure nobody comes in, or if you're waiting for somebody to come in to that confidential meeting, you can actually set a specific person to being a presenter, and then they can look out for that specific person that's supposed to come into that meeting, right? So it's kind of like the gatekeeper in a sense. So those are things that you can do to secure your meeting. Now, that's two types of meetings, and the next one is pretty common, right? Like we have times when we have guest speakers, or when we have our commissioner speaking, or when we have the leader of our agency wants to speak to a group of people. And so you want to kind of limit the type of disruptions that come into a meeting. So you can do that with meeting options, right? So one of the things about a lobby is that a lobby can actually create um, a lot of distractions sometimes, especially for the presenter, because every time somebody comes in, it brings up a banner saying somebody's trying to get into the meeting, right? So if you're really trying to limit that, you can say everyone can come into the lobby. Or if it's just your organization that's supposed to be in that meeting, set it for people in my organization can come in. And that will limit how many times that notification comes up of somebody trying to get in through the lobby. So that lobby effect in this case where for presentations, it may be a distraction. And so you want to probably let everyone in or let people in your organization through and limit that kind of disruption from the speaker. The second thing you want to do for a presentation is you want to really either set that only you or specific people. So if you're the one who's controlling who is going to speak next or who's going to present next, you want to set it to only me. And then you want to select the person who's going to present next up to being a presenter. Or you can set it ahead of time and say, these people are going to be the presenters during this meeting, and then everybody else will be an attendee. That really helps out because then, as attendees, you can now flip the switch that says allow attendees to unmute to being off. And I even shared with you, what that looks like, right? Like, so if it's blue and you toggle it off, it should be white if you want to take away all attendees' mic. So when you do that, now you've limited the type of disruptions that are going to come in because the attendees cannot turn on their mic, and then they also cannot share content. So now all they can do is really watch the presentation. They can turn on their camera or they can chat, and that's basically all they can do, right? So those are like really good things to set for presentation style meetings. Now there's also a situation in which at the end of that presentation, you might want to take questions. So maybe at the last 10 or 15 minutes, you want to allow attendees to ask questions. You can go back into these meeting options, and then you can flip the toggle from being, blacked out to being this purple color again, and then hit the save button. And then you now give the mics back to the attendees to ask questions. So even during the meeting, you can flip between unmuting everybody to muting everybody, right? I've also had the question of, what if I don't want to unmute all the attendees? I just want to unmute, one person at a time so that they can ask their questions. And you can do that, right? Remember that in the top here, when I first started, these presenters and attendees, if you want to toggle a specific person to give their mic back, what you can do is instead of giving back the mic for all attendees, you can promote the attendees that had raised their hand or put in chat that they want to ask a question. Then you promote them to being a presenter temporarily, let them ask their question, and then demote them again to being an attendee. So you can do it two ways. You can either mute everybody at once and unmute everybody at once, or you can, hard mute everybody, right? And then promote individual people to give back their mics. So those are like really good ways of controlling your meeting for a presentation. Now, the last thing I would say as a tip, and this is not a part of meeting options, this is a really good time to use the together mode for presentations. And I say that because presenters, when they're presenting, they like to see their audience and they like to look at either facial expressions or body language so that they can kind of gauge their audience and see how their presentation's doing, right? So when, as a presenter, if they turn on together mode, they actually can put people in these scenes, right? Like where they can be in a stadium and then the presenter can look at all of their audience at once, right? This together mode also has an ability to change screens down here on the bottom. So when you change screen, see, I made it bigger so you can see, click on that. You can actually change the different formats of how to look at your audience as a presenter. So as you can see here, this is a stadium view. You can see 50 people here. You can have a little bit more of a brownish, like, a closer looking setting with this 50. You can have them seated outside as 50. You have to really look at the numbers here. This is the number of participants that can be seated in these views. So if you've got, 50 people, you probably want to pick one of those bigger selections where they have a lot of people in them. You don't want to select a scene that only has 5 people, right? Because then you won't get to see your whole audience. And then you have the next type of meetings, which most people are aware of, is the collaboration type meetings, right? In a collaboration type meetings, everybody's a presenter. And it's important because you want everybody to be able to share their content or be able to, talk to each other, present, and be able to contribute. If you're doing a collaboration type meetings, the only setting I would think about is who can bypass the lobby, right? Because in the collaboration type meetings, if you're not worried about who's coming into your meeting, just let everybody come in so that it doesn't disrupt the flow of the conversation, right? Or if it's internal, always flip it to, people in my organization or trusted organization. And then in that case, people can come in, and if they're outside your as a guest trying to come in, it'll notify you that in the lobby. So that's just one setting I would hit. By default, it should be everyone can present, right? So these are the collaboration type meetings. Now, at any one time, you can take a collaboration type meeting and then put some controls around it if people are abusing either their recording rights or abusing their sharing screen rights, right? Like sometimes people are just clicking on buttons and they're sharing their screen when somebody else is presenting. So, you can kind of limit those distractions by, making that individual person an attendee, right? So that's collaboration type meetings. And then the last one is one of my favorites. It's the together mode, right? Like you can have this for team building or lunches. So these are my favorite sceneries for eating lunch. This is like for five people. This one I believe can hold, I think 15 or 30. I can't remember how many exactly can hold in the fish example here. But when you're eating lunch, if you with each other and you want to have a time when you can catch up and get away from work a little bit and catch up with your colleagues to kind of build some of the morale back, you can set it into this together mode, select these scenes, and then if you raise a platform high enough, you can actually put some food in front of you that looks like it's sitting on these tables. So that's the last type of meeting that you can create in this space. And I think, something to be said about meeting fatigue and also being able to catch up with your colleagues instead of always worrying about content and work all the time, right? Try hosting these once in a while. You'll find that it'll help brighten your day for sure. I should do that with my colleagues. I don't even do that enough with my colleagues. So that's my presentation. I'll take questions now if anybody has them.
All right, so let's see. I think one thing to just highlight, some of these features may not yet be available in GCC and coming in the future, such as some of these custom backgrounds. I'm sorry, some of these backgrounds and the ability for the together mode.
Yeah, I thought they were already in our environment in GCC because I know my customers in Vermont and Connecticut and New Hampshire and Maine already has the change scene for together mode.
So it's probably just rolling out. I just seen some notes here.
Yeah. I think it has the rolling motion, right, of when it comes into your environment. But I know like most of my states right now already has this change scene. So if you don't have it, it should come into your environment any day now.
So might want to check the versioning of make sure we're all on the latest version too.
Yeah, a common thing that I always tell my customers when they don't have a feature that others, their colleagues have, is to completely log out of Teams, right, and reboot it. So, sometimes Teams runs on the background and they keep it running and sometimes they don't see an update. So the best thing to do sometimes is just to completely come out of Teams, right, and then, relaunch it.
So there's a question, how do you create a trusted organization? I think they're speaking to like a guest access.
So in GCC, when I showed you that's what I see in my commercial tenant. You probably won't see that. What you'll see is people in my organization, right? More often than not. Trusted organization is when you federate, an organization into your tenant and then they become trusted, right? That's IT speak for bringing in or giving special permissions and saying, hey, we trust these people and bring them in, right? So that's more like federated kind of people that come into your environment.
Yes, just to add to that, John, a little bit as well. If you also add an external user as a guest to a team, they become what we call a known user in your tenant as well. So there are two ways.
Yeah.
One is to add them as a guest to your team, or two is what we call federation, and that's just chat access. So if you are continuously chatting with this person, but you really don't have a need for full-on collaboration with file sharing and so on, you could just federate with that user or organization, that
Right.
you know, their tenant can be whitelisted, and you can just have a chat with them. So those are a couple of ways of making an external user trusted or a known user in your tenant.
Right. That's awesome. Awesome question there.
Trying to vet through the questions here, John. Can Teams work in Windows 7 or Windows 8?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, obviously the recommendation is Windows 10.
Right.
Not only for Teams, but just to make sure you have the latest and greatest of all security features and enhancements to the Windows platform. I would definitely take that question back, unless someone on this call wants to chime in.
Yeah, I would say I've seen it in my customers where they've used Teams in Windows outside of Windows 10, but the experience isn't that good.
Yeah. And then there was a question about someone said, you know, they allowed everyone to bypass the lobby, but some people are still being placed in the lobby.
Yeah,
That would be a one-off, right? If you allow everyone.
Yeah, if you allow everyone to come into the lobby, they should be able to just come in. The only time when I've seen that where not everybody comes in is sometimes with phone numbers. They do get sent to the lobby and then you have to allow them in, but that's a rare occurrence.
Yeah, and actually now in GCC, we do have in meeting options, the option to allow dial-in users to bypass the lobby. So it's a little switch that you could actually turn on. So if that is the case, and the dial-in callers are the ones that are being placed in the lobby, you can manage that in meeting options.